Talk about emergency remote teaching in Bangladesh, and I'm going to share the findings of a study. I'm basically going to talk about very briefly about the background, the study aims, methodology, findings, the barriers, and the way forward. Not being able to navigate my screen. Okay. So the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted education globally. Are you able to see me?
Yes, please. Please go ahead. I think we can't see the
You
screen.
can see me? Oh, I wonder why, because all right, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted education globally. Efforts to find options to bring back learning have been launched, and due to the requirements of social distancing, online education through remote learning platforms is being seen as the immediate option. And I'd like to share a quote from Hodges et al., which Richmond also talked about, Hodges et al. He talks about temporary emergency remote teaching, and he says that the purpose of emergency remote teaching is not to recreate a robust educational system, but to provide temporary access to instruction and instructional supports in a manner that is quick to set up and is reliably available during an emergency or crisis. Not being able to move my slides. I wonder why.
I think you can do it. You are co-host yourself.
Okay. All right. Yes. So the pandemic has challenged the Bangladeshi education system, and while a significant number of educational institutions remain closed, private universities started teaching online, and most public universities remained closed for months. There were discussions and debates in the academia, the media, and online forums focusing on the feasibility of starting online classes in the public universities. And on 25th June 2020, the public universities agreed to start online classes in a flexible manner, and it was during this time that the current study was conducted. Now, the aim of the study was to explore teachers and students' perspectives on online teaching and learning in the context of the pandemic situation. And the study investigated the readiness of teachers and students for online instruction at the English departments of public universities. And the aim was to collect their perspectives with regard to the pandemic situation, and views were solicited with regard to teacher preparedness, necessity of online instruction, access, pedagogical practices, assessment, and major challenges in order to gain insights for the effective implementation of online teaching. So these were the main research questions. Mixed methods design was adopted for the purposes of the study, and both quantitative and qualitative data were collected in June 2020 from students and teachers through survey questionnaires via Google Forms, and focus group discussions were also conducted. 158 teachers participated in this study, and 1,468 students of 17 public universities all over across the country participated in this study. And the questionnaires consisted of both Likert type, yes, no, and multiple response questions. I'll just move on to the main findings. As you can see that we were trying to elicit teacher views and student views on the preparedness of teachers and students for online teaching. And it was seen that 81.6% of teachers said they had the required logistics and devices, and 61.4% said they did not have the necessary skills, and 87.3% of the teachers, they said they lacked training on online teaching, and more than 50%, that is 65.2% teachers, did not have any prior experiences of online teaching. When we came to the students, it was found and reported that 94.3% of the students, they had smartphones, but only 25.2% had laptops, and 9.2% had desktop computers. And 57% of the students believed that they had the required skills. Now, in the FGDs, when students and teachers were probed for in-depth information, they they expressed mixed opinions about embarking on online classes, but they had a very positive mindset despite the constraints. One thing which was highlighted is in the focus group discussions was 92.4% of the teachers agreed that a considerable number of students would be at a disadvantage. They were very concerned about their students because a large percentage of the students who join public universities come from a rural population, and they come from a very low socioeconomic strata of the societies. Their parents are the only bread earners, but they struggle as they are either fishermen or farmers or laborers or rickshaw pullers. So they struggle a lot meet ends. Now, students also perceive that they would be disadvantaged. Now, with regards to pedagogy, the findings showed that 75.3% of the teachers, they perceive that ensuring student participation in online classes would be problematic. And 77.2% teachers believe that monitoring students would be very difficult because this was a new mode of delivery. And 53.2% teachers reported that it would be challenging to organize group discussions in online classes. However, some students opined that they believe that they could receive immediate feedback in online classes, and the focus group discussants agreed that online teaching would be more demanding and time consuming. With regard to assessment, teachers voiced their fears, and so did the students. Only 1/3 of teachers stated that online assessment would be valid and reliable, and a large majority of the teachers, they believe that construction of online assessment would be extremely difficult, and online test administration would be also challenging. During the FGDs, teachers stated that they were not sure about the ways of conducting online assessment, as they had no prior teaching or prior experience, and they believed that online assessment would lead to cheating, and cheating would be encouraged. Students were also very apprehensive about online assessment, and they categorically said that they were very reluctant to sit for online tests. They did not want to be part of online assessment. Now, so what were the barriers? So if we quickly go through the barriers, we will see that there were issues of access and inequity because students only had smartphones. They did not have laptops or desktop computers. You can communicate, they did have smartphones, so you can communicate via smartphones, but proper instruction is really not possible through smartphones. And there was this issue of affordability, since most of the students come from a low economic strata of the society. They did not have the financial support to buy mobile data or to purchase computers or laptops. And training was a big issue. All the teachers, they said that they have had no training. A very small percentage said that they had self-trained themselves through YouTube tutorials, or they had attended MOOCs and online training courses, and very few of them had prior experiences. So training was a big issue. Regarding materials and pedagogy, we were always dealing with face-to-face materials, and for online, we needed different instructional strategies and pedagogical strategies, and finding online materials was a huge challenge. So teachers were also not sure about finding the right kind of materials and sharing these with materials with the students. Learner engagement and participation was also considered to be a huge threat, because teachers were not sure how to engage learners and how to involve learners and how to make sure that all of them were participating. Teachers were ready despite the anxiety and the stress, because they didn't want to fall behind. They said there's no other option. We have to start online teaching because the rest of the world is doing so, and we have to engage our learners. So whatever, we have no other option but to jump into this mode of teaching and learning. And assessment was a huge barrier because teachers were afraid that students would plagiarize and they would cheat, and they were not comfortable, and students were also not at all comfortable. Now, how did the barriers overcome the barriers? How did we overcome the barriers? Now, teachers, they took agency, they exploited their own agency, and the institutions also came forward, and they were trying to support the teachers and the students. Teachers tried to offer institutions and departments, they were offering short training courses, and they were others offering free online training for students also. Teachers came forward, they tried to collect funds for the disadvantaged students who were residing in the villages for them to purchase mobile data. And they were also collectively raising funds through the alumni and their friends and the neighbors and the relatives. And they were trying to talk to the students, they were trying to counsel them, reassure them that they would not be left behind. We would think about alternative ways of assessing them, and the grades would not be affected, because students were getting very depressed. And so some teachers, they formed a learning community and tried to learn from each other. Some had children who were very tech savvy, so they were taking lessons from the children. For example, I have a daughter who is in the States, and I was trying to learn from her how to open a Google Classroom, how to upload files, etc. And she would share the screen with me and show me. So this is how we were forming a community of learners, and we were trying to kind of promote a community of practice by learning from each other. So the major insights gained from our study were that online classes should start despite the constraints, and we realized that students from underprivileged backgrounds and remote areas may be disadvantaged, and there's a huge possibility that they are being disadvantaged, because one of the students reported in the focus group discussions that he had to go to a paddy field in order to get a clear connection because he was getting disconnected. Another one said had to get up on a bus roof in order to have a clear connection. So the current pedagogical practices, we realized, had to be modified, because face-to-face strategies were not going to work with the online mode, and all online assessment related activities were unanimously perceived to be difficult by teachers. So the main barriers identified were with regard to access and inequity, slow internet connection, unstable internet connection, affordability of internet costs, assessment, and training. Now, what is the way forward? Of course, we need to support the disadvantaged students by offering them and managing stipends for them, bursaries, soft loans. Our universities planning to, public universities are planning to give soft loans to the students and trying to help them purchase data packages. And teacher learning is extremely important. Training needs to be organized for teachers so that they can deliver online, they can be familiar in a proper manner with the online modality. And I think it's a good idea to create informal support networks so that the more technologically savvy teachers can support the ones who are not very technologically advanced, and form online learning communities. I think Richmond talked about online learning communities, and this is a very helpful way to go forward. And we think we've got to adapt flexible, we have a very need to adopt a flexible approach towards pedagogy and assessment. So we've moved on to oral exams, oral presentations. Students have been asked to submit assignments and projects, and we've given them a very flexible deadline. And we said, okay, if you cannot submit, you can submit it later. We will accommodate you. And we've been trying to give them feedback. So I would like to say that the transition to virtual learning is slowly becoming the new normal. We are now kind of accustomed to this kind of learning, but online learning requires requires much more than doing it in an ad hoc and in a makeshift manner. We need to start with full preparedness. If this is going to continue, we have to make sure that resources are available and access for all, and training opportunities for both students and learners, teachers, and proper planning is important. We need to specify short-term and long-term goals, and of course the intended learning outcomes of online learning, and of course the implementation strategies and assessment policies need to be formulated. The monitoring and support mechanism systems have to be in place. And what I'd like to say that despite the constraints and despite all the problems which we have been encountering, teachers and students have showed resilience, and that is so positive. They have embraced online learning with all the pitfalls or the barriers, but they haven't given up. They're struggling, but they're trying to learn, they're trying to move forward, and they're trying to keep pace with the world. I think for the Bangladeshi context, a blended or hybrid learning approach is needed even beyond the COVID. I think that is the way to go forward. Thank you very much.